Good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. It's indeed a privilege to speak to this group. Just interested, show of hands, how many of you are members? It's good to see. A friendly environment, no doubt. It's always good. Well, for reference, we now have, let me back up a bit. We have 21 stores, 3 more opening this spring. We have 2 distribution centers totaling nearly 400,000 square feet, and a head office just on Great Northern Way of 112,000 square foot, as well as a marketing office in Quebec. So a pretty significant organization in terms of real estate. I'm going to focus mainly on 2 of our buildings just for reference purposes. Just a little bit of who we are. We've been around since 1971, and some sort of fairly humble beginnings there. MEC was sort of founded by a bunch of UBC students waiting out a winter storm on the side of a mountain and complaining about crappy gear, and started making sort of trips down to REI, not necessarily declaring everything back at the border on their way back, but on a consignment basis, and it gradually sort of grew and grew from 1 store, and now up to what will be 25 by the end of next year. You can see even back then, as the first year's results came as something of a surprise, and there's a sort of, wow, maybe we're onto something good. But even in the list of things of what we should perhaps do, detail, or perhaps we should buy real estate, and that has been very, very successful for us. Just speaking a little bit about our mission and values, we're very much guided by some guiding principles. It's written, this is on our website. It guides every decision that we make. And furthermore, if we look at what guides us as we go, sustainability is very, very key to that. So we look at, we strive to build and operate our facilities with minimal ecological impact. So that's very much kind of written into everything that we do. I think that a true measure of authenticity and integrity is what you do when no one is looking. So I'm very happy to talk about green building objectives, when provided with a forum to do so. But at the same time, I'd like to think that we'd be doing it, if nobody was looking at all. Brand trust remains critical to us, and we were recently recognized as Canada's most trusted brand. At the same time, we really need to make sure that building sustainably is actually good business, that it makes sense, it makes financial sense. So I'll pose that question, what is the value of brand trust? So to be a little bit philosophical, I'll go to Warren Buffett sort of quote, what is the definition of value? So, I'm a financial guy. Value will always be what's the discounted cash flow, or value of future cash flows. So you can look at that, and that's very, very sort of true and concise sort of model. But we're not necessarily factoring everything in when we do that. Cost of carbon is not factored into a lot of what we do. And the big U.S. study about what a ton of carbon actually costs to the environment, and they came in with $37 in 2015. Various other studies, if you look at the true social cost of carbon, has it at more than 5 times that amount. And again, so as we look at sort of modeling, most models don't assume the actual true downstream cost of carbon in the environment. And again, that's something that we use as an internal sort of guiding reference point, is if we had to set the standard to a higher point, if it was higher, would that cause us to make different decisions about a cost-benefit analysis? So, another question we look at is what period of time are you actually prepared to sort of get the returns on your investment? We very much look at the principle of patient capital. We've got a couple of projects, solar projects as part of the Ontario Power Authority's FIT program. And, whether you, that program has received a lot of criticism, but be that as it may, we've got a couple of projects that we break even after about year 7, which, for a lot of organizations is way, way too far out. They're chasing sort of quarterly earnings. But it's a 20-year contract, and over the 20 years, it's actually a very, very good return. So again, embracing this principle of patient capital and looking at it on a graph, where do we sort of fit in terms of the graph? And we like to see ourselves sort of on the higher arc. We are in a competitive space. We need to make smart decisions. But at the same time, we need to focus on social returns as well as financial returns. So that's just a little bit of philosophy for you. When it comes to what is value in a building portfolio, so first decision is what do we want to build? And for us, the what is really the importance to our brand. Building something iconic, building something that resonates with the brand. So the decision around what we're actually going to build is there. And then we look at the total cost of ownership. What is the life cycle cost? And understanding the building cost may be a little bit higher, but what are those sort of downstream benefits that we might reap? We look at constructability. We looked at, can we make smart material decisions so to achieve the same outcome, but with a smarter sort of thing. And then we look at schedule very, very critically, putting all of that together. This is our typical model, and for ease of reference, if you're using the lead scale from basic up to platinum, there's obviously a bit of a hockey stick in terms of your marginal cost, capital cost going into the building to sort of achieve that sort of nth level of performance. And at the same time, you should see marginal sort of cost of operations decrease as you sort of push the envelope as well. And so really what we're trying to do is find the sweet spot in each sort of project. So if we're going into a new location, sorry, let me just digress for a moment. In some cases, we had some fantastic wins where we've been innovative and been able to achieve wins without being a trade-off. This is our North Van location, which is a very good example, and our sort of on-site water management system. Through a series of swales, we're actually able to avoid connecting to the storm sewer system at all. So effectively eliminate the cost of that by on-site water detention and retention and then flowing out to the river. So again, some certain innovation there. If we look at our choices going into a new sort of retail location, our first and foremost sort of choice is the right retail location. So just we're in the business of retail. It absolutely has to be that. Then we look at lease or buy. Our preference is to buy where we can. It's a great reinvestment vehicle for us, but it also allows us greater latitude to be able to sort of push the envelope a little bit further in terms of capital investment up front and to be able to reap the downstream benefits. And I think if you look at that, at the model generally, where developers are developing for resale, there's not necessarily incentives to make highly efficient buildings where that is not necessarily sort of passed on. The operating costs are not sort of savings are not reaped by the seller as well. So again, just to matrix that, sort of a large market, big investment, owned building, we would tend to push more towards the LEED Gold, LEED Platinum, and a smaller market, existing building, retrofit, again, we would sort of limit our investment and again, sort of look at it on a cost-benefit basis. So I'm just going to walk through our head office, which is a building that we moved into in 2014. So we've been there about two years. We looked at the design brief, and the design brief was to, how do we create something special? It needed to be as sustainable as possible. It needed to be cost effective. It needed to be a great place to work. It needed to reinforce a collaborative work style, needed to support and enable our culture. It needed to ensure that the wellness and community was there. Needed to be democratic and equitable in terms of how we structured, and it needed to be inspirational. So we worked on an integrated design process to get there. It's a heavy timber construction, and we're anticipating LEED Platinum accreditation for this. So that's what we created, but we did some really cool stuff to get there. I'm just going to walk you through it. Given the moderate Vancouver climate, we really wanted to design the building to be as passive as possible. And the first step was looking at average sunshine. I think some people might call BS on these particular numbers in Vancouver, but that was the research. Then we looked at the average prevailing winds on a year-round basis, which direction and how strong. And then we looked at what was the monthly average for sunny hours with little to no wind. We looked at the narrow width of the building, and with two clashing horizontal planes, what that would do to allow natural daylighting, reducing the load lighting. By reducing the load on artificial lighting, we're able to reduce the load of cooling and create something a virtuous circle. We're actually a little bit off in our modeling. With the mountain effect on the North Shore, there's a lot of white cloud. So the actual sunlight or natural light coming off the North Shore mountains and the lights actually created a lot more light on the north side of the building. And again, we were off to the good, should I say, in terms of the amount of light that we were able to garner. And with using the information that we did with the wind-driven natural ventilation, we were able to create a very, very cool ventilation system. Wind-assisted, so depending on which way the prevailing winds are, drawing in wind with the help of fans at the bottom of these ventilation shafts. This is used significantly in the Middle East and has been for many, many years, but it's just an enhanced sort of thing. We distribute air to the building through a plenum system, and depending on whether we're in recirculation mode, if we're trying to keep not drawing cold air, so this time of year, that's typically what we'd be doing. We'd recover heat on exhausted air. We look at the occupancy load with 400 to 500 people and the amount of heat that people actually generate. That's in the modeling. We reclaim energy from the main floor, electrical room, and our server room. So whether we have ground source heat pumps and geothermal wells, so whether we're in radiant cooling mode, and again, the modeling showed us that most of the sort of comfort that you experience is through radiancy, not air temperatures. Radiancy is about 50%. And so we went with a sort of radiant heating and cooling model. So whether we're in radiant cooling mode or in heating mode, whether we're regenerating the hot and cold tanks, whether we're rejecting excess heat into the ground in the summer, or drawing heat out of the ground in the winter. Again, we have this sort of virtuous circle, and the aim is to balance that we draw and we put back the same amount of heat, on an annual basis. That is a kind of net zero, so we aren't significantly heating or cooling the ground on an annual basis. Again, when we look at value, we look significantly at how the built form assists and supports the organizational culture of the organization. We looked at where we were located. For us, attracting and retaining great staff is absolutely critical. In the grand scheme of things, our rent costs, our occupancy costs are a fraction of what our payroll costs. So again, looking at things such as productivity and an overall sort of financial model, this is critical for us. Just a couple of shots, a very open collaborative work style. You'll see that all the work surfaces are white to allow for maximum light bounce, even a slight whitewash on the ceiling. Low divider heights, again to allow maximum light penetration, reduce the lighting, artificial lighting load, reduce the cooling load, and so on, and create this virtuous circle. So that's probably one of the best views in Vancouver, looking at the North Shore Mountains. Again, looked at it being very democratic. This is the top floor. There's no sort of ivory tower. This is spills out from the lunchroom and drawing up everybody through the building. And again, sort of look at value from not just the value of the building, but again, the value to the organization as a whole. This movie wouldn't be MEC without a climbing wall as well. I just had to throw that in. That's on our ground floor and it's often used. This is our new Vancouver store. We're moving. Our lease is up by March 2020 on Broadway Street. So this is a project that we're just in the process of breaking ground. Also heavy timber construction. I want to talk a little bit more about that. It's basically through ensuring that all of the different inputs, from architectural to mechanical, electrical, and structural, are all considered cross-reference. We hope to build the building virtually before we ever put a shovel in the ground. We're actually using CAD makers for the first time. We're very excited by what we've seen. The goal for the project is to manufacture as much of the project as possible. So with the correct inputs and diligence around the modeling, we intend to generate a complete fabrication model. So, for example, where heavy timber is coming in and there's an interference with a pipe or so on, those will be pre-drilled and be put into place and just aid the speed of construction. For this building, unlike our head office, we are tying into the district energy system. And this is actually one of the innovations. We looked at this for the head office, and we found that we couldn't achieve the modeling that we wanted. We're currently working on a plan where we're able to not only draw heat from the district energy system, but actually return heat to it and sell it back. And again, we are just about on a net basis where we anticipate drawing about 195,000 kilowatt hours and returning about 285,000 to the system. We project the building energy performance to be significantly better than a reference building, especially in the area of heating. But while that is the model, the ongoing generation, collecting, analysis of measurable information relating to the building's performance will be critical to maximizing the value of this new venture over the longer term. And again, so I'm really pleased to have this opportunity to talk here for us looking at that from a cost benefit, going back to the Warren Buffett model of discounted cash flows. This is absolutely critical to the way that we think, and I think that the way we all need to think. So while we're very excited to take on a more detailed and integrated information-based approach as we tackle constructability of new store, I'd like to reflect on a number of projects where things didn't go well. And our concern and our biggest sort of issue by a country mile has been the various municipal processes. To a point that it's a recent store opening back east. City council stood up and apologized. I mean, we lost about a year and a half through processes, not understanding the code, where we're trying to push the envelope in terms of innovation, and not have the equivalencies and the interpretation, very much siloed effect at the municipal level, which has been we look at the total cost of construction, the speed of construction, innovation around that, but unless there's some significant sort of tie-in, upstream into the municipal process, I think that, we as builders and other developers will continue to battle in that area. So I would really like to see more of an upstream, sort of tie in to the municipal process for us to be able to extract more value out of our sort of building program, and I'm sure that others will too. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and sincerely hope that initiatives such as this will create a better environment for innovation to flourish, efficiencies to grow, and for value creation to accelerate. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Sandy. If we may have a few questions, but if I may start with the first one, Sandy. And again, first a comment, appreciate that key point. It all went back to value, free cash flow, right? So tying what we do in a technical sense right to the CFO's office. So thank you for that. You talk about the designs, you talk about optimizing the operation. Did you ever establish an in-house information manager as a role, whether you call it facility information manager or what have you? Or are you relying on somebody external, whether it was your architect or constructor? Interested in your experience there.
Yeah, the head office has been an interesting one. It's very good at the integrated design side, so working with M&E and architectural and so on. We've found it very difficult to have sort of facilities and maintenance people that have this sort of broad sort of gamut of skills. So we have used obviously outside consultants for commissioning, but ongoing sort of reference point.
Yes.
And as it turns out, our lead has just moved on for family reasons. So again, we're in the market for that. But that is a very, very difficult skill to attract and retain. Because of, it touches so many aspects of the building to be able to troubleshoot. We found that optimization has been quite difficult as well. That really is an issue with one, part of the heating and cooling, and sort of not hitting our target performance, and the ongoing sort of troubleshooting, and this cycle of continuous improvement is really, really critical. So it's an area that we need to look to enhance in terms of maintenance and performance.
Thank you. I hadn't realized that. It sounds to me like yesterday some of us were together and talking about information management, and it's so complex, and here's an end client talking about that complexity. So often in the BIM world we hear BIM FM. Well, who's actually going to manage and support that, right? So I appreciate those comments. Questions, please, from anybody on the floor. Yes, sir.
Typically, what kind of project delivery model do you operate on? Is it still traditional design, bid, build, or is it more construction management, or even a design build project?
It's very much construction management. One thing is that we tend to keep going back to the same team of consultants. Who are used to working together and sort of really understand our program. So we bring in the construction manager very, very early into the process. So there's value engineering right from the get-go as well. But I think continuity is a big sort of issue. And so, for example, our mechanical and electrical, we use a group out of Montreal that is... Again, there's a repeatability to what we do, taking the learnings. Every project is different because the environment is different. So whether, most of the time of year in Vancouver, the temperature's between 5 and 15 degrees. And so, we use an expression, you don't build a church for Easter Sunday, so there will be days where we're a little hot or a little cool, but able to optimize around the anticipated temperature range. Whereas back east, you'll have from plus 40 to minus 40, and it needs to be a different response. So.
If you don't mind, just a follow-up to that. So you mentioned that on this latest project, you were using CAD Master.
CAD makers.
Who really do excellent
Yeah,
work, but
yeah.
my experience has been that they typically get brought in on a project to fill a gap in the capacity of the consultant team.
I can't speak for that. You know, the early response has been absolutely fantastic in terms of troubleshooting, finding interferences that we didn't know were there in the first place, and really looking at, you know, how much can we prefabricate drill holes. It is heavy timber construction, so it does allow us. And again, the sequencing of construction, which is looks to be very, very helpful from the get-go. And that's something on the head office construction where we went with nail lam. The sequencing of that, you know, could have been improved. And again, you know, taking a couple of months out of the cycle would have been helpful. Money never sleeps, so.
Sir, if you may use the microphone, please. Yes.
Hi there, my name's Bob Heyman. I'm a partner in a BIM consulting firm here in town. We work quite closely with the architects of both those projects, actually. And I was just curious if there was a BIM mandate on either of them. It's in line with Charles's question about CAD makers and how that process aligned with the design team involved in both those projects, and if there was a BIM mandate at all.
No, there's not specifically a BIM mandate. It's something that, you know, again, we're doing the parts of it that we feel are most critical, but we do continue to learn as well, so we may evolve to that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other? Oh, Cheryl, you're next then, or okay, perfect. Cheryl.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. How do you ask for information at the handover of the facility? Is my first question. Then my second one is, how do you engage your facility managers into the design process?
Good question. So comprehensive, you know, commissioning process. We do look at manuals, but the creation of manuals along with the as-built and everything else. As I say, we have 21 you know, different stores at the moment. We have centralized the management of that locally, so everything is we can hook into every building system across the organization. So that is run locally. Again, it's an area that we continue to evolve. When we look at, I was mentioning kind of the sweet spot in terms of how far we push the envelope as well. We're steering away from going too complex, and we've had some systems that have been incredibly complex. So we're trying to push innovation, but at the same time finding simplicity on the far side of complexity, if that's a good way to sort of put it. You know, the simpler, the beauty is in the simplicity. So, yeah.
All right. Scott? Right. Sandy, thank you very much. So appreciate your help in being here. Thank you. Great contributions. Yes. Thank you.